How does the Texans defense bounce back? Well, taming Wild Will and dethroning King Henry would be one heck of a way to start. Welcome into the channel. I'm Cody Stoots. Let's talk some Texans. They get ready to take on the Tennessee Titans on Sunday on the road in a game that's not quite a must-win game, but my goodness, does it become difficult to see how the Texans make the playoffs if they don't beat the Titans this weekend. It's a tough matchup for the defense. They've got to take care of their business because the offense isn't going to be quite up to par with some of the players that are missing over on that side of the ball. How exactly do they do this against the Titans? Well, we'll talk about Will Levis and his wildness, dethroning Derrick Henry, DeAndre Hopkins, a familiar face and new foe that Hopkins is. We'll talk about all that in the video today. Would love a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Before we get into taming Wild Will Levis, the Texans have had some rough performances against quarterbacks over the course of this season. You think about what Desmond Ridder of the Falcons did to this team. Bryce Young and company against the Texans, where the Panthers got what's probably going to be their only win of the season. Zach Wilson just last week. Now, not all of these games are created equal, but the Texans have allowed a majority of the opposing quarterbacks to have either their best day or second best day against their defense. Now, again, they won some of those games. They beat Trevor Lawrence in week 3. They beat Baker Mayfield on a last-second CJ Stroud fantastic drive. But they lost some of those games. Now, I think it's important to put some of them in context as well. They lost to Desmond Ridder. He had a really good day. He got benched a couple weeks later. The offense settled for a bunch of field goals that day. Remember how often they were running the field goal unit out there? Instead of being able to put touchdowns on the board, they were settling for threes. And even against Bryce Young and the Panthers, the defense played really good that day. The offense couldn't get anything going. Well, the offense may have trouble getting things going on Sunday. It's not quite you have to pitch a shutout. You can't lose a shutout, but they have got to be tight on defense. They've got to take care of business. How do they go about doing that? Let's start with Wild Will Levis, as I've deemed him, the quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. This guy is unconventional at the quarterback spot. That's the way I would say it. He plays it like a linebacker sometimes. If you watched Monday Night Football last week, he tried to run over Jalen Ramsey. A couple of weeks ago, he had one of the weirdest plays of the NFL season where he threw an interception and then forced the fumble and recovered the fumble all on the same play. Will Levis is a wild man back there. I said unconventional because he'll roll out and make some throws with that big arm of his that not everybody can make. He'll also roll out when he doesn't have to roll out. He'll do some things that quarterbacks just don't regularly do against this Texans defense. And the Texans have to be ready for the unconventional nature. And when he does make a mistake by trying to improv, the Texans have to take advantage of that mistake that Will Levis is going to make. Look, he'll throw you one. You saw it Monday night against the Dolphins. He threw a pick six deep in their own side of the field. It was an awful pick six. It nearly cost the Titans the game, but don't sleep on the guy. He's unconventional. He makes mistakes, but he's got a little juice to him. He came off the bench, threw 4 touchdowns in his debut. He had a ton to do with their good finish to the Dolphins on Monday Night Football, where they scored a bunch of points in the final 3 minutes to come back and beat Miami. When he has the opportunity to make plays, he can make some plays, but that offensive line can't protect him very well. And I mentioned the mistakes. Not only will he throw you interceptions, he puts the ball on the turf quite a bit as well. Levis has 4 fumbles in the past 2 games. He's lost half of those. So you got to be able to get to him often and early, and make sure that that wildness that he has to his game is working against him and not for him. The one thing that really scares me about Levis, that's something that Zach Wilson did, that's something that Desmond Ridder did against this team, even Baker Mayfield. Levis has a little mobility to him. He can extend a play. He can get away from a rush. And the Texans, you saw it with Zach Wilson, they got some pressure, but Wilson was able to roll out, use his arm to make some plays. Levis can do the same thing. So without Will Anderson this weekend, without Blake Cashman to kind of be that spy to help out from the linebacker spot, the Texans have to get a ton of production out of Jonathan Grenard, Sheldon Rankins, Malik Collins. And when they get close to Levis, they've got to finish or force Levis to make a decision. He can't be extending plays for this Titans offense against the Texans defense, or it's going to be a long, long day for the Texans. Again, he's Wild Will Levis. Sometimes that works out for Wild Will Levis. Sometimes that drives Mike Vrabel and the Titans crazy with some of the improv that he puts together and some of the lack of results that improvisation brings for Will Levis and that offense. Speaking of Will Levis and the offense, DeAndre Hopkins, got to love him some Will Levis. All of Hopkins' touchdown catches this year are from Levis, and, well, Levis didn't start till week 7 of the NFL season. So Hopkins still very good at what he does, still brings a lot to the table, and I like the way that defensive coordinator Matt Burke, as well as DeMeco Ryans, described DeAndre Hopkins, is essentially you can have him covered and he's still open. He's one of the best point of contest catchers in the National Football League. He can go up and get the ball, and even when you have a good rep against him, he can still go out there and make the play, and he and Levis have been on the same page a ton. We mentioned the big debut that Levis had a moment ago. Hopkins was an extreme part of that, catching a bunch of those touchdowns, and in Levis's starts, Hopkins has a third of the yards in Levis's starts. He's the main receiving threat that you have to worry about on this Titans team. It's not Treylon Burks. It's not the tight end. It's not any of the other wide receivers. It's Hopkins. They will look for him early. They will look for him often. And if Hopkins gets going, Texans fans, everybody knows what that looks like. He can take over a game. You can't let DeAndre Hopkins get going. So Derek Stingley, Steven Nelson, they've got to be ready for those matchups against Hopkins, and maybe even a little help over the top with the Jalen Petries and the Jimmy Wards, just to make sure that Hopkins isn't the guy that's taken over and taking care of business, like Texans fans have seen him do so many different times in a Texans uniform. That's Will Levis's guy. Make Will Levis beat you by throwing it to everybody else that's not DeAndre Hopkins. That's one way you can get this defense rolling on Sunday as well. Speaking of rolling, my goodness, King Henry, Derrick Henry, he's treated the Houston Texans like England treated the colonies before 1776. He has ruled over the Texans so many times. He is not as impressive as previous years, Derrick Henry, but he's still really good. He's approaching 1,000 yards rushing. He scored 2 touchdowns in each of the last 3 games that he's played. He is rolling right now, but King Henry, he's got a new squire, a new knight, or something like that, if you will, in Tyjae Spears. The Titans have been using Spears, the rookie running back out of Tulane, a bunch the past couple of weeks. They throw him the ball a lot, which they did Monday against the Miami Dolphins, and they'll run the ball with him a little bit as well, limiting what Derrick Henry brings to the table. Look, Henry's 2 weeks removed from a 100-yard rushing game and a couple of touchdowns against the Colts. I don't want it to act like Derrick Henry's not any good anymore. It's just not as quick, not as impressive, not as dominant as it has been in previous years for Derrick Henry. So they've added in Spears a little bit to take some of the burden off of Derrick Henry. By virtue of doing that, you got to be ready for Spears to catch the ball out of the backfield. That'll be a challenge with no Blight Cashman on the field for the Texans. He's one of the best cover linebackers that this team has, so it'll be big for Henry To'oTo'o, Christian Harris, Jake Hansen, whoever ends up in coverage to take care of Spears. They threw the ball a little bit to Henry to start the year. They haven't thrown the ball to him as much. He did have a really nice 17-yard catch on Monday Night Football, but the targets and the receptions for Henry are going down. They get him in the red zone. They use him a ton in the red zone or on goal line. They snap the ball directly to him, and when he gets going, he's just so hard to bring down. I really would have loved to have seen Will Anderson in this opportunity, because he's a key aspect to the Texans' solid rush defense that they've had all year. But it'll be up to Sheldon Rankins, Malik Collins, the other defensive tackles, as well as Jonathan Grenard, who is pretty good at stopping the run himself. They have got to keep Derrick Henry from getting going. You talk about Will Levis and the improvisation, the mistakes, the wildness to his game. You can limit a lot of that if Derrick Henry is taking care of his business on the ground. You've got to force Will Levis to take care of business, not let King Henry start ruling the land like he has before when the Texans have played this Tennessee Titans team. He's a big guy. The Texans have some big guys on the defensive line. And as far as the linebackers go, I actually like this matchup a little bit for Denzel Perryman, for Henry To'oTo'o. Get in there, get after Derrick Henry, go thump him. I don't like those guys in coverage. As far as stopping the run, they've helped out quite a bit over the course of this season. It'll be paramount for them, Christian Harris, and whoever else the Texans are running out there at linebacker to be on their P's and Q's. But, of course, we all know it starts up front with that defensive line. Rankins and Collins and Grenard and whoever else is filling in for Will Anderson, they have got to hit Henry as soon as they can. Get those tackles for a loss. Get those stuffs for no gain on Derrick Henry and keep him from getting things going. And when he's out of the game, they've got to be aware of Tyjae Spears. He is a really nice player, and the Titans have leaned on him the past couple of weeks. Don't let him get going either. Make this be a Will Levis game. If you can make Will Levis beat you, he might have enough. He might have the juice to do it, but you'll tip your cap to Wild Will. If he takes care of you, you'll be moaning and groaning and saying, same old Texans, if Derrick Henry has another humongous day against the Houston Texans defense. So Sunday's the game. No C.J. Stroud, no Will Anderson, no Nico Collins, more than likely. No Tank Dell, who's obviously out. It's a tough challenge for the Texans, but they're going to run guys out there. They got to play the games, and everybody else has been hit with the backup quarterback bug, so the Texans are the latest team to do so through their last few weeks of the season. Unless C.J. Stroud is back. If he's back, hey, maybe it's the last few weeks of C.J. Stroud on a triumphant return because Davis Mills took care of business on Sunday against the Titans. If you want to take care of some business with fantasy football, my friends at Underdog Fantasy are the way to go. Underdog Fantasy is the best way to play fantasy. They got the Pick'em format where you put together 5 stat predictions and you could 20 times your money. And with the Scorcher picks, you can improve your payout to up to 100 times your entry fee. It's stat predictions. It's very simple. Higher or lower on predicted stats. You put them together and you can win money. Heck, you can do just 2 together and you can still win that way as well. My viewers get 2 times their first deposit when you use my promo code Stoots, S-T-O-O-T-S. Promo code Stoots is going to get you 2 times your first deposit when you head over to Underdog Fantasy, and they are the best when it comes to fantasy. I love the Pick'em format, and I love their best ball playoff format as well. Start drafting a best ball team. Best ball is set it and forget it. Draft the team. The best players automatically start for you. They've got the weekly winners format where they pay out winners every single week. They've also got the season-long, postseason-long best ball as well. From Pick'em to best ball, it doesn't matter. Underdog Fantasy is the best way to fantasy. Game responsibly and get that 2 times your first deposit when you use my promo code Stoots. It's S-T-O-O-T-S, promo code Stoots. The link is in the description down below. It'll autofill that promo code. And if it doesn't, S-T-O-O-T-S is that promo code for you as well. On your way down to the description, throwing me a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the little bell to have notifications for when new videos and lives start here on the channel. Certainly appreciate all of the support that you have given me over the course of this season. It's not nearly over just yet. It's not over for the Texans. They got 4 left, and we're going to break it all down, all the way through the regular season, whatever playoff push there is. If there's playoffs, we'll have tons here on the YouTube channel for you. And, of course, the offseason, one of the more interesting and fun off seasons coming up for the Texans. We can't get all the way there until we get to Sunday against the Titans. We've got you ready for the Texans defense versus the Titans offense. Be looking here on YouTube for more before Sunday's game. And, of course, all throughout next week, get you ready for the Browns coming to town. Appreciate you watching the video. Can't wait till we talk Texans again soon.